Hello everyone. This is a War of the Ring tournament session report. This game is the first game of the third round in the 2021 International Tournament. I am MrWeasely, your host, and also the player of the shadow side. At the time of this game, both players were 3-1 in the tournament, so pretty evenly matched. And this game I thought was pretty interesting because it saw a huge free people investment in the wildlands of the north. And the implications of that are pretty far reaching. Um, and it was also pretty elegant in that neither side ever spent a sword to move characters or minions. Everything just kind of flowed naturally. And lastly, uh, I think we're going to talk about when to invest your energy in moving the fellowship versus when to invest in military defense, uh, particularly with focus on the end game. So we're a long way from the end game. We'll take it from the top. And let's get started. So the shadow starts out by allocating 0 eyes, because they really want those 2 musters. And they get them. So they will get Saruman on the first turn. And they don't pay any penalty. They get 2 eyes in the hunt, which is the number you want to have. And the free get an adequate roll. And we start out. Free start out by mustering a elite and a leader in minus Tirith. And they get another card. It is Imrahil of Dol Amroth. So they get the Gondor starter pack. They move the Fellowship and immediately get hunted. Bad luck for them, and it's a 3. So Gandalf lasts their second action die. And then the Shadow plays the Shadow Lengthens to move a Shadow army, 2 pairs of armies, 2 regions each. They've drawn this using their Palantir. They will use their Palantirs to paw through the deck for strategy cards because they want those early reinforcement cards early when they're most useful. But they didn't get them. They got the Shadow Lengthens and the Shadows Gather. And now they try and make it up. And mainly they move Barad-dûr to Morannon, getting that army out of the gate as fast as possible. And then for the second half of the move, they move South Downs to Moria. And this is obviously not a great move when you're moving just 1 army, but the idea is to enable. I'm contemplating an early Lorien rush, and getting a Eisengarter in the army that's besieging Lorien unlocks, a good 3, 4, 5 cards that you can use to good effect in an early Lorien blitz. And the Fellowship moves again, this time without effect. And we round out the turn with Saruman coming into play and the elves moving towards war. Pretty fine start for both players. Nothing too remarkable. So, turn 2. Both sides get really nice dice. The free people, in the headliner, they get the Will of the West, which means they will get Gandalf out on turn 2, which is great for them. The Shadow, and they get 2 swords and an army muster, which is great. The Shadow, for their part, gets 4 army musters, so they can get everybody to war and maybe the Witch King out, hypothetically. Or they can move armies around and just get Mordor to war. They've got a lot of options. So great this is going to be a fast game with dice like this. Okay, so I'm just going to fast forward through this really fast. Okay, so the Shadow has marched all the way from Dagorlad to northern Ravinion, and they've also consolidated their Moria and Dol Guldur armies just north of Lorien. And the Fellowship moves for the fourth time in 2 turns, and they get revealed with an eye tile. So they're at step 4, and they have some bad luck here because typically, if you get revealed on the 4th move out of Rivendell, you will reveal in Dimrill Dale. But bad luck, there happens to be a huge army sitting right there that's going to give the Shadow tons of rerolls if you ever try to budge from that spot ever again. And also your chances of getting to Lorien are looking really grim. So the Free People think a long time about this. Would they rather have the extra move? If they go to Dimrill Dale, they'll for sure get a stronghold tile, and they will maybe get hunted an extra time. So I'm thinking like the stronghold tile's like half a hunt tile, and then the extra hunt is obviously half a hunt. So it's like 1 extra like solid hunt tile hit for them to go there. Do they really want to do it? Well, it turns out, yeah, they do. They accept that challenge. So again, we're moving towards a fast game with high corruption. And I think that pretty much finishes out the turn. So the Free People get the elves to the brink of war, and this will have big implications next turn. So, turn 3. So at this point, at the dawn of turn 3, the Shadow now has attacks they can do. The Free People are clearly going to get the Witch King this turn. Sorry, the Shadow is clearly going to get the Witch King this turn. The Free People have had their economy going for a long time. The Shadow now joins them. And what I mean by getting your economy going is like every action die is fully efficient. We're not seeing like using swords to move an army with no one to fight. So this is pretty early to get everything humming. And the Shadow, the Free People hide the Fellowship with their first move. And now the Shadow has a decision to make. They've got 2 Elven strongholds to attack. Whichever one they attack, the other one gets to muster. So in Dimrill, they've got 10 hit points of Besiegers versus 5 hit points of Defenders. That would go up to 7. That would push that siege into the danger zone. In Woodland Realm, it's 11 hit points versus just 3 hit points. So if Woodland Realm goes up to 5 hit points, it's not really in the danger zone yet. So that's why I chose to let Woodland Realm muster. On the other hand, Lorien is a little bit easier to reinforce with Moria only 2 away instead of 3 for Dol Guldur. Well, we'll see how it goes. So Lorien gets pushed in, and then Woodland Realm gets mustered. Witch King comes out. Fellowship moves, gets tagged on the hunt reroll with a 2 reveal, and they decide to lose Pippin. Promptly goes to Fangorn. And I'm just going to fast forward through this really fast and then recap it. Okay, so what happened there was the Free People also had Thranduil's archers, and so they get another elite in Woodland Realm. So they now have 7 hit points to 11 for the attackers. So this siege is like already very dicey, probably under 50% chance that it pans out for the Shadow, even before the first die is thrown. So this is a major coup for the Free People in that they got their reinforcement card on the place where they also were able to muster a reinforcement. Also interesting that the Fellowship ended up eating 3, count them, 3 hunt tiles this turn. The 2 reveal when they moved, and then a 2 on Isildur's Bane, which they took on Corruption, and then a 1 from an Orc Patrol, which they also took as Corruption. So they're up to Corruption 5 already, which seems kind of high, and maybe a little rough for them. So let's go to turn 4. The Free draw their cards, and they've got some tough discard options here. And they end up tossing Horn of Gondor, which makes sense, and Book of Mazarbul, which I don't know. There's active armies up here. I wouldn't mind having Book of Mazarbul. They've got Bilbo's Song and There's Another Way, both kind of healing cards. So do you really need 2 of those? Elven Rope, and then a bunch of solid muster cards. So a little disagreement there. And on this dice roll, the Shadow actually gets a bad dice roll. They only get 1 attack die this turn. This is turn 4, and they will basically not be able to take military action. They get 1 attack this turn. That's it. So they're going to have to resort to card play and using these musters creatively to move ahead. And they don't have a great backlog of cards. They do have Olaghai and Hill Trolls, which I think it's clear to me now that they need to put these into Woodland Realm immediately. Because they're at a premium for attack dice, they should just get a bunch of elites. But the Fellowship gets great dice. And I think they moved twice against 3 dice successfully. There are the Hill Trolls. And then the Shadow attacks. And they play Olaghai as we come to kill, thinking, we'll get an average of 1 hit. But they whiff with it. And that's their 1 attack for the turn. And they then halt the attack because they need troops. They don't need time. Got plenty of time. Shadow gets everyone to war. And the Free People get Grimbjorn. And Grimbjorn immediately marches into Old Forest Road. And this is probably my best opportunity to bop him on the head. but I don't have an attack die, so I can't. It would be nice to take these guys out. It's, even if they retreat, the North isn't going to be at war. It's my best shot. Goes downhill from here, I assure you. So that's turn 4, kind of a quiet turn. Turn 5 will definitely heat up. All right, so at the top of turn 5, Grimbjorn makes his transit to Dale, and the Rohirrim start to go to Helm's Deep. Solid defensive move. And now the battles start. So the Witch King comes for Woodland Realm, and we see We Come to Kill versus Valor, and the dice do not, let's see, the dice end up with, the free people get 4 hits, and the Shadow gets 0 hits. Well, they get 2 hits with We Come to Kill, but they're currently losing troops faster than the elves. And their once mighty army is down to just like 5 bear army units, 8 hit points, versus the elves at 5. So they have to stop. But then they come back again next turn, and they desperate battle, and they get good dice. They get 4 hits. And so that basically breaks the elvish defenders. The attackers bust down once and finish it out with Great Host. So overall, the stats in that battle taking place over 2 turns is both sides lost 7 hit points of armies. And that's a pretty good trade for the free people, I think, given that now this army is, barely the equal of this Dale army. To say nothing of the dwarves. Yeah, so an attack on Dale looks a little tough. But the Shadow has set their sights higher than Dale. They play Ring Wraiths for Abroad, the only time they'll move Nazgul all game, to fly their leadership cadre over to Lorien and attack, immediately dropping Deadly Strife. They Yahtzee with 5 hits, and it doesn't really matter what the 3 defenders do. So in the course of 2 Shadow dice, they've gone up 4 victory points. So we're well into the mid game now. And I think what we're starting to see is that all the strategy card draws that the Shadow are doing are giving them a bit of an advantage in combat. Because once the free people get down to like 2 or 3 army bases, the Shadow just Deadly Strifes or desperate battles, and then the battle closes out. So let's finish out the turn. The Fellowship moves again this turn and is safe. And the free people move the North to at war, which seems right, because the alternative is mustering army units for the elves. And the Shadow musters up an elite army of Daggos in North Dunland and moves them to Holland, and also moves their Oilifants into the dwarf backyard of Iron Hills, where they're threatening Dale from the other direction. So We are now halfway through the game. No, we're on turn 6. So turn 6 is really the last turn of the mid-game, and I define the mid-game to be where you don't know where the shadow is going to strike for sure. But the shadow has definitely committed to striking some places. All right, so the shadow gets 4 attack dice and three non-attack dice and 2 eyes. Of course, they're forced to allocate one of those eyes, so that's about average. And the free people get the 2 swords they need to get into Mordor this turn. And here's the big play. The shadow plays. Shadows gather to move the veteran Lorien attackers all the way to Holland, shifting through the Misty Mountains and just 2 spaces from Rivendell. And now the shadow has this, like, from very humble beginnings, now this overwhelming army with tons of leadership. And so the free people have to make a decision now where they've got 3 musters this turn. They've got 2 elites in the hunt bag, in the hunt pool, and they've got 4 elven regulars in their casualties. So if they choose, they can muster now, muster when the shadow moves into Trollshaws again, and have a 4 elite, 1 leader army in Rivendell to resist this. 8 hit points versus 14 hit points. I'd probably say the 14 hit points are going to win just because of the strength of the Witch King's card play, but it's going to be close and it's going to be long. And if they've been counting cards, they know that there are no Oleg High or half-orcs and goblin men. If they stop this army, then they've stopped the shadow short of, just mustering up more guys and walking them really far. So the free people decide not to defend there. They pass. So shadow marches in and puts Rivendell under siege. And attacks Rivendell, of course. And the Shadow's not gonna let this battle go more than 1 die. Now that they're here with 4 elites, that would be foolish. And they get it in 2 rounds. And the free people move the 2 regions they need to get into Mordor. They lose Merry in the process. Merry splits off to Osgiliath, Fellowship, Corruption, climbs to 6. And here we see the free people spend their last musters really buffing up this Dale army. It is 4 regulars, 3 elites, 2 leaders. So they've got 2 good options with this. One is to go beat on Woodland Realm. I guess they have to worry about the Siren Hills army too. And they also, could get Dol Guldur if things go that way. Um, so they ended up spending all three of their musters in Dale this turn instead of defending Rivendell. And as a result, Rivendell went down immediately. And the Shadow's very passive here. The Shadow's kind of choosing to ignore this because, they've got their 2 victory points in this region. If they can hold this, they're happy. That's right now the best outcome they can muster. So that wraps up turn 6 with one little asterisk. So right now the Free People are at 6 victory points, and it looks like they've got a bead on Dol Amroth with their Umbar army, and then they need 2 more victory points. At this point, I'm thinking march this super army all the way to Grave Havens. So that seems like 2 turns. And that's probably what it seems like to the Free People too. They are assuming they're getting into Mordor, but unbeknownst to them, I've drawn Cruel Weather this turn, and I blow the Fellowship back to Eastern Brown Lands. And my opponent remarks that he'd noticed that last turn I went down to 0 character cards. So he'd been counting the new character cards I'd drawn, and it was only the one at the start of the turn. So he was like, 1 in 19 chance you had Cruel Weather. Well, I had it. That's the way the game goes sometimes. I think we can say that is bad luck. All right, so turn 7, which will be the critical turn. And so I'd really like to wrap this up in 2 turns. I need 4 victory points. Dol Amroth looks like it's going to be surprised by this Corsairs of Umbar move. I've got the card in hand. Meanwhile, I don't have another good stronghold allocated. So what I do is I move the Rivendell army out to Trollshaws, and then also while I'm doing that, I move Mordor Beta out to North Ithilien, almost as an afterthought, thinking, I can play for Pelargir here. Should have gone for South Ithilien, just in case I need to go around this Osgiliath army, but that Osgiliath army is super wimpy. And I'm kind of thinking I don't want it to go around me and run up to Morannon or something. But I should just be focusing on getting to Pelargir. Now the Free People spends their only army muster playing Faramir's Rangers, can't resist playing Faramir's Rangers against Mordor Beta. They miss, but they get this elite and leader, which is great. This army is quite competent now and is going to bounce around as soon as it's attacked because Minas Tirith doesn't need it. So that's super annoying. On the other hand, now the Free People do not have any army musters, which means this Westnet army cannot get into Helm's Deep in an emergency situation if, say, this Isengard army that's been built up a little bit. If that Isengard army just goes in, I don't see how they get this in. Like maybe they get a lucky retreat and then use a sword, but chances are it doesn't get in. So this changes my plans. I'm no longer going to invest the 5 dice in walking the Witch King all the way across the west. I'm just going to run over to Helm's Deep and see if I can bag it. Like, yeah, I've only got 9 hits of armies in this region, and they've got 6, but they're all separated and they've got bad dice. I've got a chance. So pivot, attack Fordsweisen, get great dice, kill Theodred, wipe out the horsemen, and now again, um, the free have this like big decision to make, and what cards do they have? They've got an Ent card, and here's Saruman just hanging out bare naked, so they can get him. And then they've got 2 healing cards, which both would be fine to play. They've got We Prove the Swifter, where they can, they've got Gandalf and Pippin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They can get to Dol Amroth. They can get to Dale. They got a lot of options here. But I think, they've got the swords. They've got more swords than they need this turn. This is the turn they can move their companions around a little bit. The one turn of the game. What they don't have is a lot of time before this goes under siege. And they don't have a good way to get these fellas in here, but they could spend Elven Ring. An Elven Ring effectively gives the Shadow player another die, because the Shadow doesn't really need musters at this point. So free people take a long time to think about this, and they kill Saruman with Ents. And I think this, as a Shadow, I'm okay with this, because I can get Helm's Deep with 3 action dice versus 5 action dice to get to Grey Havens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put 6 action dice, counting the siege action. So that saves me 3 action dice with this attack instead. Not having Saruman loses me an action next turn. And beyond that, I don't care about this. I want to win by next turn. So a 3 for 2 trade. And then my opponent kills their action dice. And then I'm like, not following it up with another character card? Surely they've got one. Yeah, they do. Okay. So they prove the Swifter to Dale, and okay, so at this point, as of the close of this action, beyond any doubt, Woodland Realm is going to be reconquered by the free people. It's just a matter of time and how much they'll have to lose to take it. For sure 2 action dice. But the cost is the Shadow puts a puny regular under siege in Helm's Deep. And wipes it out. So again, there's kind of been another trade here where the free people have given up on Helm's Deep in exchange for depowering all the doggos, killing a Shadow action die next turn, and increasing their odds in Woodland Realm. Their odds were already very good. So that was a trade-off. And then they muster a leader in Dale, which seems redundant to me, and a leader in Westennet. And I would have gone with a regular, like this army is still breathing down their neck, could go for Edoras. And for that defense against that, you want a regular. If they're going to make some mad lunge for Lorien, that's different, but that's a lot of dice. And there is just this one bullet stopper defender that can just walk in there and slow them down. Yeah, so I think they would have been better with. I mean, my first choice would have been elite in Westimate. My second choice would be in regular in Westimate, and like a leader in Dale would have been fine. They're just sort of fixated on Dale at this point. The Shadow spends their last muster. They try to muster the Mouth of Sauron, but of course the Fellowship isn't even actually in Mordor yet, so that gets taken back. And instead they make some pitiful little musters in their strongholds, defending against Free People military victory, which is, I guess, another good reason to have a leader there, is they're thinking about military victory. So they need to be able to move those armies on sword results. But that muster shuts it down, again, because we didn't have the Elven Ring that they didn't spend. So they were sort of hoist on their own petard there. And they finish out the turn by besieging Woodland Realm, and the Shadow dumps its special hunt tile into the pool. So the Fellowship makes it to Mordor. I guess it flipped by there, but they ate a 3 entering Morannon, and the 3 hit Gimli. So, turn 8. Let's see what the die roll is. So, to win with Fellowship this turn, the Fellowship has to move 5 spaces. And so they have to roll basically 5 swords, which they do. And they got 4 swords and a muster, and they've got a full bank of Elven Rings. So that could happen. It's unlikely, though. Look at this hunt pool. They've got 1, 2, 3 tiles that don't reveal them out of 13. So it's mathematically impossible for them to make it all the way this turn because they know they're going to be revealed. So they need to settle down and last through the turn while still moving the Fellowship a little bit, and then next turn make a run for it. So at this point, the Free People need to do the absolute minimum they can to keep the Shadow under 10 victory points for the turn. And then all the rest of that energy needs to go to Fellowship movement so that they, next turn, if they get to like step 2 this turn, then they're going to have to move 3 steps next turn. And that's very hard to do. So if they can move 3 steps this turn, that puts them in a much stronger position. But if they move 3 steps this turn and lose militarily, then then it doesn't matter that they're in a better position next turn, because next turn they're dead. So they start out and they move and they get revealed right off the bat, and it takes out Legolas on a 1, which is they're a little tight on corruption. It's kind of a tough blow. So at this point, I know that Free People Ring Victory is off the table for this turn. And so I'm assessing my priorities. I still have 4 victory points I need to get because I've written off Woodland Realm. My thoughts of flying Nazgul there to help in the defense, well, they've got Gandalf, so he's just going to switch off any Nazgul I fly there. So yeah, I got to get 4 points some other place. And the good news is, he'll have 1 less sword this turn. but can I do it? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attack dice. I need 2 for Dol Guldur, and then 3 others. Is that right? Yeah, so how do I do that? Well, first of all, I attack Dol Amroth using the Palantir. Corsairs of Umber, of course. And now I have 5 attack dice, and I can do it because I need 2 there and 2 there and 1 more here. And here I'm gambling, right? These are all a little bit risky battles. And I'm not flying my leadership corps, which is still hanging out in Trollshaws, doing nothing. I've got the 2 swords, but I don't have the time. I need all the attack dice. And so if these 3 regulars are suddenly joined by these 2 elven elites, then I can't really win this siege without bringing in leadership. And we're going to have to go another turn. So I just have to gamble. That War of the Ring is a game that forces you to take some gambles. And then figuring out how I'm going to spend my dice, I need to use my 2 swords on this Ithilien army because they're the only army I'm going to be attacking with this turn that has leadership, 1 Pitiful Nazgul. So I start the Osgiliath to Pelargir drive this turn. I really wish I'd marched out to South Ithilien, then I could go around this formidable Osgiliath army, just go to Pelargir. It would be much easier. But I didn't. And so we attack Osgiliath, and they do really well. They get 3 hits with no quarter, and I only get 1 hit in return. And so, mighty Mordor Beta is suddenly 6 regulars versus 2 regulars with actually superior leadership in Pelargir. And now I think I start to see some serious fatigue on the part of my opponent. It's their turn. They know they're not getting the ring in this turn. They need to hold on. What they need is an elite in Pelargir. That will pretty much shut down this army. I mean, statistically, it activates their valor. They've got heroic death on deck. They've got fateful strike. If they want to assassinate that Nazgul in the first round of that combat. So they could defend Pelargir here, and they spend the muster. They take it back. They attack Woodland Realm. They could have done that any time. There is no rush on that. It's not like you lose the game if the shadow gets 10 victory points. Like if you get to 10 victory points in the middle of the game, in the middle of the turn, doesn't matter. The victory point check is at the end of the turn. So I disagree with this move. But here they go. They get 3 continues, 2-3-5 versus 4-0-0. We all know how this is going to go. It's just a question of how much of their life does it eat away. And the battle goes 3 rounds. And basically, like the 4 regulars just sort of subtract out the 4 shadow regulars just subtract 4 life points away from the Free People army. So it's straight 1-to-1 attrition. And bam, like that, the Free People knock the shadow down to 6 victory points. But they've been distracted. And they pay for it in Pelargir. And the battle's still not a certain thing, but the shadow gets Shadow has a slight edge, and the dice go their way, and they get it easily. Okay, so here again, the free people have this mustard die, and they've got to write. If they don't have certain chips, they've got to write off Dol Amroth. If they do have certain chips, they should have played it by now. So um, they need to hold Edoras. So they should get a regular in Westernet and a regular in Edoras. But instead they hide the Fellowship. And the Shadow pounces, marches into Westernet, gets again good dice, 2 hits, trading for 1. And yeah, so now, this is over. Five hit points of attacker versus 1 hit point of a defender. We all know how this is going to go. The free people move again. The Fellowship moves again. And here comes the attack on Edoras. And, they're feeling pretty confident. They lost a regular on the first round. And they lost. Then nothing happens the second round. And then the third round, they lost another regular, and they're just not killing this guy. And then, like, the next round, the free people starting to believe, right? They play Heroic Death, and the Shadow gets exactly 1 hit, so it kills off that leader. And, it's happening. But no, eventually the dice give it up for the Shadow with just 2 armies left. One of them finally hits, and they claim Edoras, taking them to 8. And Fellowship moves again. Great, they got to step 3. But now comes the Battle of Dol Amroth. The Shadow has, with these Oliphants, they're going to get 3 rounds of combat. They need 3 hits. They've got Desperate Battle. They've got 2 Relentless Assaults, and arguably enough Umbarians to make use of it. And it goes how you expect it to go. The Gondor troops get blown away. So that wraps it up. Shadow at 10 victory points. So it's a good game. And as the Shadow, I thought I was winning at every point after Lorien. So the Stronghold Conquest order went Woodland Realm, and I was a little behind there. Then Lorien, I thought I was ahead or on track. And then Rivendell, and then the end game suddenly started, and I ran and grabbed Helm's Deep and Dol Amroth, and then 2 cities, but lost Woodland Realm. And I think we saw some overinvestment by both players in armies that did not provide the value of their investment. For example, chief among them was this Dale army that got way too big, and it absorbed 3 musters for getting in the war, plus King Bran's men, plus Grimbeorn the Old, son of Bjorn, plus mustering 2 elites, plus, okay, so that's 7 dice, plus, Gandalf the Grey could have gone to Dol Amroth, could have saved Helm's Deep, plus, attacking Woodland Realm. So that's 10 dice worth of actions. So, 2 raw turns of output to take back 2 victory points. And once they did, it really cost. So those 10 actions really cost the Shadow, I guess, the effort of attacking Edoras and Pelargir, which, ended up being 4 dice. So, maybe 6 dice. So 10 dice for 6 dice is a bad trade. Like the free people needs to be more efficient on their defense. And likewise, the Shadow had this huge overinvestment in doggos in North Dunland. But again, yeah, they flattened Rivendell with them, but they might have been fighting 8 hit points of defense for elites in Rivendell. And for that, 14 hit points is like what you want to have. So I don't really apologize too much for that. Yeah. Okay, so let me get back to my thoughts. Then on the last turn, the Shadow needed 4 victory points, and they had, essentially 3 battles. They had to drive from Helm's Deep to Edoras, they had to drive from North Ithilien to Pelargir, and they had to take Dol Amroth. And I think all of those battles were 80 to 90% battles, and they had to take all 3 of them. So that's, a small chance of mishap in each of the battles, but it adds up to, they only had like a 60 or 70% chance of winning this turn. And, obviously you take that if you can. The free people could have knocked their chances way down with some strategic musters this turn. They got to step 3, but like if they had been at step 2 and held Pelargir, then they're odds-on favorite to win next turn. Look at their hand. They've got Bilbo's Song, so their corruption will go down to 5. And, if these eyes are only hitting for 2, they've got a chance. There are a lot of zeros in here. They got a good chance. So I wish, well, I don't know if I wish, but they had an opportunity here, and they needed to like slow down the Shadow in the end game. So recognize when you're in the end game and slow them down. And then the last thing I want to point out is that if you're in a situation where you're the free people and you can either retake a stronghold or defend a stronghold, as was the case with Woodrun Realm versus Rivendell, carefully think about how many action dice each of those is going to absorb. By retaking Woodrun Realm, they lost 10 action dice. And by giving up Rivendell, Rivendell fell in 1 turn. The Shadow would have had to go slow, would have had to use like 4 action dice to reduce it if there had been 8 hit points of defenders there. They would have had to like do all kinds of action card cycling. That would have served the interest of the free because they just needed 1 more turn. So I learned a lot from this game. I don't think I usually think at this level. So I hope you did too, and thanks for watching.